This video is going to show you how to win Monopoly every time. First, we're going to show which properties to buy and which not to buy. Then, we're going to look at the odds of dice and how to use those odds to give yourself good luck and your opponents bad luck. Then, we'll dig into the main moneymaker itself, houses, how many to buy and when to buy them. And then finally, the most important key to winning, good trades. And, if your opponents are refusing to trade, how to disguise your trades to look good for your opponent when they're actually good for you. If you gain value from this video, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm. Also, write a comment about anything. YouTube likes that too. And if you want to help the channel grow, hit subscribe. If this video brings in over 1,000 subscribers, I'll make a second follow-up video with just advanced stuff in it. First, we're going to look at what to buy and what not to buy. But before we even get into that, we need to understand how the board works. The board is incredibly uneven, so there are hot spots and cold spots on the board. You can learn all the probabilities land anywhere on the board, but we want to keep this easy for when you start your game and you forget everything you know, including your name. Just remember, jail is number 1. And since jail is the most likely spot to land on, spots after jail have higher probabilities of being landed on. Also, there is one spot you can't stay on, the go to jail spot. Because of this, it's harder to land on the spots after this, so we can split up the board into 2 halves, which I will refer to as the jail side of the board and the go side of the board. In a typical game of Monopoly, you stand higher odds of winning by owning properties on the jail side of the board. Now, that being said, here's the properties you should buy and properties you should avoid. For sake of time, I'm not going to go through each one. If you have a question, write it in the comments, and if we hit enough subscribers, I'll make the follow-up video with these in detail. One important side note is if you're playing Monopoly correctly, there are only 2 things that can happen with a property if you land on it. Either you buy it or put it up for auction. Since you can mortgage a property for half its price, if you win an auction for less than half of the price, you actually make money on it. So don't completely scrap the idea of getting a property you don't want for very cheap in an auction. Plus, it also could be used later in trades. Next, we need to understand odds of dice. If you have a firm understanding of this, you'll appear to be lucky and getting more good rolls than your opponents. And the reason is you actually are getting luckier. But let's be clear, you're making your good luck through good strategy and good decision making. The dice are going to do whatever they want. First, observe this dice chart. For 2 dice, 7 is the most likely roll, and then rolls closest to 7 have higher odds versus rolls further from 7. You don't have to be a genius to have good judgment with dice. You are simply going to make offensive moves such as buying houses when your opponents have strong odds of landing on your properties, and you'll make defensive moves such as hoarding money if you have high odds of landing on opponents' properties. There are plenty of random variables like cards that can shake things up. 2 of the community chest cards will send you to other spots, while a whopping 10 of 16 chance cards will move you to other spots on the board. Keeping tabs on these will give you a leg up. You can expect each one to be drawn once a game, so you can cheat a little if you know a card has or hasn't come up. The best rule of thumb for a turn is that each side is 10 spots, and 3 rolls of the average 7 is 21 spots, so assume half of the board is roughly 3 turns away no matter where you're at. Then, if someone is 5 to 9 spots away from something, there is a 2 in 3 chance, or 67%, of landing in that range next turn. If we take our number 1 spot of jail and look at the spots 5 to 9 spaces beyond that, we hit a range largely encompassed by orange, which is why this color is so valuable. However, none of the spots on the board are particularly powerful without houses. There's only 2 rules you need to know with houses. First is never buy a house you expect to sell. Selling houses only return 50% of your money, so avoid this at all costs. If you need money, mortgage a property instead. It's much cheaper. Second, your best return on investment is 3 houses. You don't have to have 3 houses for a good setup, but that should be your initial aim. The strategy of when to buy your houses is simple. You need enough additional cash on hand so that you can survive a blow without selling any houses. Let's say hypothetically, your opponent has hotels on the light blues. Rent here is $600. You have $300 you could gain from mortgaging all of your non-house properties. This means it is safe to buy houses until you have $300 in cash left because you could survive the $600 without selling any houses. Now, let's say you have several players who are 6, 7, 8 spots away, and you're halfway across the board from that hotel. It makes sense to be more aggressive since the odds of collecting house rent is high, and that incoming rent will offset the cost of landing on their hotel if you do. Now, on the flip side, let's say you're 10 spots away from that hotel and no one is near your properties. It would be a terrible move to buy the houses until you've passed the danger, because if you do land on their properties, you'll lose a lot of money when you have to sell your houses. As with all things, this comes with some finesse. What do you do if the other player is 7 spots from you and you're 7 spots from their hotel? Do you take the gamble and build the houses? If they land on your houses, it might force them to also break down their hotel, softening the blow if you do land on it. This is a judgment call that only you can make. Along with this, forcing your opponent to sell their houses can be a major blow for them and unravel any strength that they've built. You can also set up the circumstances to make other players unravel in the trades you make. Trades are a required part of the game if you want to win. The odds are low for you getting a monopoly on your own, so you'll need to trade if you're going to build houses. There are 2 reasons to trade: trading for offense, which is pursuing money-making properties for yourself, or defense, which is blocking others from getting their own monopolies. An example of a defensive trade would be trading for the 3rd orange property so that another player with 2 orange properties can't get it. This doesn't bring you much money, but it stops the other player from acquiring power. What trades you should make should simply be in the pursuit of gaining property sets you want for property sets you don't want, or stopping players from putting houses on good property sets. We can do this by simply owning a rainbow of colors, but often this can leave us stuck as well. And what do we do if the properties we need are held by someone who refuses to trade with you, or even worse, holds a grudge against you and will trade your opponent good stuff for cheap? In this case, we're going to need to be stealthy and disguise our trade in such a way where your opponent thinks he's getting the better deal. Don't worry if everyone thinks the trade looks bad for you right now, because in the end, you'll be the one who wins. Let's look at this example. You own 2 pinks, 1 orange, 1 light blue, and $600. Your opponent owns 1 pink, 2 oranges, 2 light blues, and also $600. By all measures, your opponent is winning, since orange is the better property set over pink, and light blue can become fierce for cheap. Now, let's say you offer a ludicrous offer: the orange and light blue for the pink and $400. If your opponent is smart, he will know he's getting the 2 best monopolies for less than they're worth, and he probably won't hesitate to say yes. On the surface, this is a terrible move by you, but if we look deeper, it's genius. You now have $1,000, which can buy 3 houses on the pinks, while your opponent only has $200, which can't afford anything dangerous. This is a risky maneuver, because if that opponent does get money, it'll backfire drastically. But if opponents are close by to pink when you do this, you may quickly get several house rents before anyone else catches on to what you've done. You also need to be careful to consider other properties that can be mortgaged. If your opponent is sitting on a bunch of yellows and greens, they might be able to mortgage them for several $100s and torpedo your plans. The biggest key is to recognize when someone can or can't afford to reach 3 houses. Having 3 houses on a bad monopoly is better than no houses on a good monopoly. On the surface, this trade is awful, but underneath the hood, you've hijacked the game. This is just one example, and there are plenty of other trades like this that you can pull off that can make even the most reluctant to trade players bite. So, let's recap the entire strategy in one quick soundbite. Split the board into the jail and go sides, and work to control the jail side. Then use dice probability to decide when to go on offense and when to go on defense. Aim to build 3 houses on your monopoly, but avoid ever selling houses, and use trades to get yourself a monopoly and the cash necessary for 3 houses, while trading your opponent properties that leave their properties either incapable or too poor to build 3 houses of their own. Follow these strategies and you'll win Monopoly every time. If you learned something, give this video a like and subscribe if you want the advanced video.